My father handed over our multi-million-dollar fishing empire to my sister's boyfriend, a man with no maritime experience and a forged degree, ignoring my 15 years of loyalty. Todd tanked client deals, wore loafers on the dock, and vanished with $200,000. Now the buy's after him, my sister's devastated, and I am left salvaging the wreckage. The man I called Dad chose a fraud over his own blood. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. I was raised on the docks, gutting fish before I could drive by 16. I captained small runs, while Dad taught me the business, dock to invoice. He trusted me with payroll, clients, even crew management, so when he brought Todd into our family dinners, I thought it was about support, not succession, not betrayal. Todd joked about tightening the ship, and Dad laughed. That's when I felt the ground shift under years of loyalty. Todd showed up in a starched shirt and soft hands, asking about profit margins before learning boat names. He sat in my old seat at meetings, pitching branding updates and efficiency matrices. I bit my tongue as Dad nodded along. Vanessa gushed over his vision. It felt like losing a war I didn't know I was fighting. Ray warned me, low and careful, that guy's never hauled a net in his life. I should've listened then. Todd fired Carl, our lead dispatcher, saying he wasn't agile enough, replacing him with a friend who couldn't read tide charts. Boats missed slots, fuel costs spiked. I brought this to Dad, calm and direct. He waved me off, said Todd had a modern edge. Vanessa said I was being territorial, but I saw Ray shaking his head. Mike Dalton cut a run short, furious. Something was off and I was the only one seeing it. Todd pushed a $30,000 rebranding, new logo, uniforms, boat wraps, all style, no strategy. Long-time clients called confused, asking if we'd sold. I confronted Dad again. Showed him invoices, he shrugged. Todd knows marketing. That night, I found our original logo crumpled in the trash. Ray said the new wraps peeled in salt spray. Vanessa brushed it off. Progress hurts. I stopped sleeping. Every gut instinct screamed we were veering off course. And no one cared. Invoices doubled. Vendor complaints trickled in. I tracked a payment to Whitaker Consulting, a non-existent company. Todd's surname. I showed Marcus, our accountant. He paled, whispered, "This smells bad." Dad refused to look. "Don't accuse your sister's fiancé without proof." Vanessa blocked me on social. Todd called me toxic. My role shrank. I wasn't in meetings. Crew stopped taking my direction. Todd was gutting the business from the inside, and I was being painted bitter. Todd invited a consultant team for a fleet review. They wore suits, snapped photos, asked no real questions. I asked for credentials, got silence. Next day, one boat got reassigned, another decommissioned without warning. Ray muttered, "They're gutting for sale." I confronted Dad. He sighed. Let him try his way. My hands shook. Mike refused to sail under Todd's direction, but Vanessa called him old-fashioned. I started saving documents, screenshots, anything I could hold onto. Then came the staff meeting. Todd announced a restructuring. My title was gone, streamlined for innovation. I sat in the room I once ran, now voiceless. Crew looked away. Dad stayed silent. Vanessa smiled faintly. Later, I found Todd's laptop and attended. I copied files, backups, emails. My fingers trembled. Marcus warned me, be smart, not impulsive. But inside, I burned. Todd had taken my legacy, my family, and was laughing in my face. Not for long. I called a board meeting, dropped a folder thick with evidence, fake invoices, ghost consultants, and the Whitaker Shell Company. Todd scoffed. Feigned confusion. Dad looked torn. Vanessa refused to meet my eyes. I laid it all out, charts, emails, even bank trails. Todd smirked, said desperate move. But Marcus backed me, quiet and firm. Still Dad wavered. Let's not jump to conclusions. My heart cracked. I'd exposed the truth, and they still clung to the lie. That night, Vanessa texted me, "You've crossed a line." Todd filed a harassment complaint. I was locked out of accounts. My name scrubbed from internal directories. I paced the docks alone, wine-biting. Mike handed me a flask and said, "You did right." But it didn't feel like victory. Marcus warned me Todd had allies. Dad still hadn't responded. I'd gambled everything on truth and lost. The company was infected, and I was the outcast now. Marcus found loan documents signed under Dad's name, tied to Todd's shell firm's fraud, clear as day. But without Dad's cooperation, we couldn't press charges. I tried one last time. He met me on the pier, eyes tired. I just wanted someone young to take over, he whispered. I nearly shouted. Instead, I left the files on his truck seat, said nothing. I turned to Mike, and we walked toward his boat. I'd start somewhere else. Todd tightened his grip. 2 more crew were fired. Vanessa moved into the office full-time. Mike's runs got cut. I took a job on a rival boat. Silent and focused. Word spread. Quiet sympathy from old contacts. Ray handed me a hard drive, archived invoices, flagged errors. Do what you must, he said. That night, I mailed everything anonymously to a regulatory contact Marcus trusted. No signature, just facts. Then I waited, and kept working quietly. 3 weeks later, regulators raided the office, files seized, phones taken. Todd wasn't there. Vanessa called me crying. Dad had collapsed during questioning, stress-induced heart issue. Todd's accounts were frozen, he'd vanished. I sat on the pier, holding the old crew photo from years back. We'd built something real. Now it lay in ashes. Marcus called, "They're asking for you." I stood slowly. Maybe I wasn't finished after all. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end. The buy agent asked only one thing: help trace Todd's offshore patterns. Marcus and I laid out everything we'd saved. Email chains, payment routes, shell links. The scope shocked them. Todd had pulled this con in 2 other states. My gut twisted. Dad had signed off on every deal, unknowingly or not. He'd been a pawn. Vanessa refused to speak to me. But now finally, the world saw Todd for what he was, a seasoned fraud. Vanessa showed up at my place, eyes hollow, clutching a flash drive. I found his Dropbox. You were right. Inside, fake resumes, dating profiles, and photos with other women, some dated during their engagement. Her hands trembled. He used me, I nodded. He used us all. She whispered, "I need your help." That flash drive gave investigators the last piece, proof of intent, scope, and identity. Todd's mask had cracked, and the truth poured out fast. Dad apologized, not with flowers or speeches, but with a simple gesture. He handed me the original deed. "I was wrong," he said, voice shaking. "Fix it, Jake." The weight hit me. The business, the shame, the mess, it was mine to restore. I called Ray, Mike, even old clients. "We're rebuilding," I told them. Some cried, some cursed Todd, but one by one they came back. Broken trust isn't the end, it's the start of proof. We auctioned off Todd's Audi, rebranded with a new name, Anchor Revival, kept the old logo, hired back Ray, rehired Dalton's crew. Vanessa worked in accounting, now silent but solid. I let her, she needed healing too. Todd made headlines, multi-state fraudster faces federal charges. Every day brought calls from regulators, journalists, old allies. I stayed focused. Rebuilding wasn't revenge, it was restoration, of name, of trust, of worth, and this time, I set the terms. I met with the union, showed them our new policies, real safety protocols, proper pay. They signed on. Word spread, Anchor Revival wasn't just surviving, it was a standard. One day, a former competitor visited. Heard you turn this around, he said. He offered a partnership. I declined. We didn't need mergers, we needed roots. That night, I walked the dock alone. It smelled of salt, diesel, and dignity. I'd lost everything and somehow gained more than that. Todd's trial streamed online. Vanessa and I watched from the back. He looked smug until the agent listed every alias, every forgery, every account. His lawyer wilted. The judge denied bail. Todd turned once, scanning the room. Her eyes met. I didn't blink. Outside, reporters swarmed. I said nothing, just drove home. Justice wasn't a war. It was the quiet relief of truth standing unshaken. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in years. Ray called, checked the docs. There, nailed to the office door, was a note. Thank you for saving our name. CM, my grandfather's initials. Someone had kept that letter from decades ago. I framed it. We hung it behind the front desk. Every captain touched it before leaving port. It became our ritual. Not for luck, for legacy. The old ways mattered, not in nostalgia, but in honor. Todd stole time. We rebuilt what time forgot. Vanessa took over vendor relations. Quietly, she restructured payment schedules, renegotiated terms, and flagged legacy errors. One day, she handed me a binder every flaw Todd had buried. I want to fix what I ignored, she said. I saw her differently then. Not just as my sister, but as someone trying to right the wrongs. Redemption wasn't a word, it was effort, daily quiet. And hers echoed the one thing Dad had forgotten: accountability. A supplier tried extortion, threatened to leak fake audits Todd had forged under our name. I met him at the marina, laid out a cease and desist letter. And 2 affidavits from federal agents. He backed down. Later Mike said, that's how you lead. I didn't feel triumphant, just solid. I'd learned power isn't in yelling, it's in truth held firm. Todd had played games. I was building something real with every move. Anchor Revival became untouchable. An old rival, Eli, sent a check repayment for a loan Todd forged in our name years ago. You earned this. His note read. I remembered hating Eli. Now, he was returning stolen pride. I donated the funds to a maritime scholarship under Grandpa's name. Vanessa cried when she saw the photo on the announcement. He'd be proud, she said. For once, I believed it too. Not because we'd won, but because we'd made it right. A journalist reached out, wanting to feature our recovery story. I hesitated, then said yes. The article ran from con to captain, how Jake Warner reclaimed his family legacy, calls poured in, apprentices, donors, former crew. We started a dockside program for youth. Dad showed up unannounced at the first workshop, said nothing, just watched, then quietly offered his old boat as a training vessel. We took it not out of pity but because the story wasn't over. Todd's sentencing hit headlines, 10 years, no parole. Vanessa and I read it over breakfast. She didn't smile, didn't cry, just exhaled. Justice, she said. I nodded. The weight lifted, not from vengeance, but closure. I texted Mike, it's done. He replied with a single anchor emoji. At the docks, we flew a new flag, navy blue, white anchor, silver thread. Our symbol now. Not broken chains, not scars, just a promise we don't sink twice. An old crewman, Jorge, returned after 3 years. Heard the rats are gone. He joked. I handed him a clipboard. Ian, he grinned. That week, we filled our quota in half the time. Crew camaraderie was back, laughter, shouting, music on deck. Even the sea seemed calmer. Someone left a note in the break room, this feels like home again. That's when I knew what Todd broke wasn't the fleet. It was trust. And we'd rebuilt it. The bank offered us a business credit line again. Full approval. Vanessa and I stared at the letter. It wasn't just numbers, it was validation. We framed the approval and put it next to Grandpa's letter. Anchor Revival wasn't just a float, it was charting new waters. Ray toasted with coffee. To the long haul, he said. For the first time, our crew felt like family again. Not by blood, by choice. And that made all the difference. An industry conference invited me to speak. I stood in front of captains, CEOs, rookies, told them the truth, not just about Todd but about silence, loyalty, and fighting for what's real. When I finished, a man approached me. My son's going through something similar, he said. I gave him my card. Call me anytime. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just rebuilding a business, I was making sure others didn't sink the way we did. The mayor awarded Anchor Revival a community service plaque. Vanessa accepted it. Why? Stayed on deck, welding repairs. She called, voice thick. You shouldn't have been here. I told her, we're not done yet. She laughed. It was the first genuine sound in months. Later that night, we celebrated with grilled fish, laughter, and a toast. Ray said, to second chances and stubborn sons. I raised my glass, not to the past, but to what's finally ours. On the anniversary of Todd's arrest, we held a quiet dockside dinner. No speeches, just presence. Dad stood beside me, weathered and silent. He placed a rusted old anchor pendant on the table. Grandpa's, he said. I thought I lost it. I held it, felt the weight not just of metal but of memory. That night, I hung it in the office, right above the flag. Legacy, rebuilt, not because we were perfect but because we endured. I wake at dawn, walk the dock and hear laughter again. It's not just a business, it's a crew that trusts again. I no longer flinch when someone questions my decisions. That's growth, that's survival. Todd's shadow may linger in our ledgers, but not in our spirit. Each sunrise is proof we weathered betrayal and rebuilt with truth. And every knot tied now holds stronger than it ever did before. Vanessa keeps a photo of us as kids in her desk. The day we reopened the marina, she handed it to me. For every time you didn't give up, I framed it in the new office. Every time I look up, I see who we were and who we became. Forgiveness wasn't weakness. It was strength learned the hard way. And sometimes, healing starts with a single shared memory and an open door. Todd's name became a cautionary tale in fishing circles. New recruits learn his story day one, not to shame, but to teach vigilance. Vanessa leads that talk. Dad sometimes sits in. We don't hide the past, we use it. Anchor Revival now funds scholarships for maritime youth. One girl, 16, said, I want to captain one day. I told her, then start here. Our future now isn't repair, it's launch. The docks look the same, salt-stained. Noisy, alive, but something changed. We greet each sunrise not with fear but pride. The crew wears old uniforms again, by choice. We vote on decisions. Respect isn't demanded, it's earned. I keep Grandpa's anchor above my desk. Every day, it reminds me legacy isn't what you inherit. It's what you fight to rebuild when no one believes you. And we fought, and we won together. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe to check out more stories on my channel.